Mark Dimondstein is president of the American Postal Workers Union, which represents more than 200,000 employees of the U.S. Postal Service and approximately 1,500 employees in the private sector mailing industry. Prior to taking office as president, Mr. Dimondstein held a variety of positions in the APWU. He was elected to 6 consecutive terms as president of the Greater Greensboro Area Local, serving from 1986 to 1998. From 2000 to 2010, he served as the national lead field organizer, where he engaged in a series of groundbreaking union organizing campaigns and contract negotiations for private sector workers in the mailing industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, committee members. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you here today. The Public Postal Service is a central part of our jobs and economy. The Postal Reorganization Act states, quote, "The United States Postal Service shall be operated as a basic fundamental service provided to the people by the government of the United States, authorized by the Constitution, created by act of Congress, and supported by the people. The Postal Service shall have as its basic function the obligation to provide prompt, reliable, and efficient services to patrons in all areas, and shall render postal services to all communities." End of quote. The Public Postal Service, run without tax dollars, is indeed a national treasure. E-commerce makes it as crucial as ever. Yet its mission is being threatened by many corporate and Wall Street forces that seek to undermine it and privatize it. The 2006 Postal Accountability Enhancement Act, the PAEA, with its outrageous burden of pre-funding retiree health care 75 years into the future, something that no other entity, public or private, has to do, has led to degraded service, understaffing, closed post offices, slowed down mail, reduced hours of retail operations, and driven away needed revenue. In 2012, the Republican Party platform essentially called for postal privatization. It appears, with my research, maybe I'm wrong, but it appears that the 2012 Democratic Party platform was unfortunately silent on the postal issues. We hope this time your platform addresses strong support and commitment to a vibrant public postal service and unequivocally opposes any attempts aimed at postal privatization. Specifically, I would encourage the platform to include some of the following: ending the congressionally mandated pre-funding mandate that was passed by Congress in 2006, returning to overnight delivery of first-class mail and periodicals within the same metropolitan area, and speeding up mail delivery overall, which is a promise to the American people, maintaining 6-day and door-to-door delivery, reclaiming full hours of retail operations in rural communities, many of which have been cut to 2 and 4 hours a day, and appointing Board of Governor and PRC members who are truly advocates of a strong public postal service. And there are a number of other things that, in the sake of time, I will skip and maybe come out in the questions. It's also vital to enhance postal services and expand postal services. And I encourage platform planks to include: 1, providing basic postal financial services, such as paycheck cashing, which is in opposition to the predatory payday check cashing industry that preys on tens of millions of the working poor. I refer you to the United States Postal Service Office of Inspector General report of January 2014 for insight on this issue. And I also note that the Take on Wall Street agenda, endorsed by the AFL-CIO and a number of unions, Americans for Financial Reform, and so on, have included in their 5 points postal banking. And 2, promoting vote by mail, which increases voter participation and is at least a partial answer to the scourge of voter suppression. The Postal Service, again, is vital to jobs and the economy by providing services to individuals and business customers alike, and providing a foundation of decent unionized living wage jobs won through collective bargaining, which lift up our communities. And by the way, jobs with equal pay for equal work for women, minorities, and solid job opportunities for veterans. Collective bargaining is indeed part of the solution to reverse accelerating and obscene income inequality, which has been a central issue in the 2016 election. The platform should enthusiastically support unions, collective bargaining rights, including banning permanent replacement of strikers, because we can't have collective bargaining rights and permanent replacement of strikers, and promoting workers' rights to organize unions free from company intimidation. A few closing thoughts touching on some other things as well about the jobs and the economy. I hope the platform will boldly, A, address the need to raise the minimum wage to at least $15 an hour, pegged to future inflation. B, advocate for rebuilding our declining infrastructure. I live in D.C. Our metro is a classic and sad example of what happens when we ignore the infrastructure. And by addressing it, thus creating millions of decent living wage jobs. And C, absolutely oppose fast-track trade authority and TPP and TISA that enrich multinational corporations at the expense of the 99%. And by the way, directly threaten public services such as the public United States Postal Services. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lee?
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here and for your testimony. My grandfather was the first African-American letter carrier in El Paso, Texas. He spoke fluent Spanish, retired from the Postal Service after 35 years. And I remember as a child going to the mailbox getting his retirement check. And that really helped my family in terms of our economic stability. The Postal Service has been a primary employer and one of the first for African Americans and people of color, lifting people of color, African Americans, into the middle class. And these were good paying jobs. The privatization of the Postal Service, could you kind of speak to what that means in terms of communities of color and in terms of how these cuts and this privatization movement has really impacted, as a person of color, as an African American, our communities throughout the country?
Thank you, Congresswoman. Privatization, while it's presented as a way to improve services and make things more efficient, whether it's privatization directed at postal services or public education and so on, is really simply a transfer of wealth from the workers who are making a decent living wage and often unionized job to a private entity where workers get paid often non-living wage jobs, poverty-level jobs, jobs without benefits, jobs most of the times without unions, but somebody reaping the profit in between. The post office takes in about $68 billion a year in revenue, no tax dollars, revenue from the users, and the privatizers want a piece of that. And in that transfer of wealth, when it goes to the private side, we have two things that happen. The workers make less, so our communities and communities of color directly suffer. And the services to all the communities, including the communities that are less advantaged, will also suffer through privatization. The great thing about something like the post office is it's mandated by the Constitution to serve every community equally. And when you get into privatization and how a piece of mail gets delivered by whether somebody can make a buck or how many bucks they can make, then our communities, particularly the poor communities and the working class communities, are going to suffer the most. So we do look at the defense of the public postal service as both a civil rights issue in terms of jobs and service and a small d democracy issue in terms of the right of the people to communicate privately and for whatever reason they want, whether it's friends, family, medicines, business, commerce, and so on. And we're very proud of the fact that the Postal Service has been really a model employer of equal pay for equal work and job opportunities. And the story you share, we hear all over as I travel this land about, for instance, activist Danny Glover is a public face of our Grand Alliance to Save the Public Postal Service. And the reason he's so involved and enthusiastic and passionate is his parents were postal workers. And he will tell the world that because of that postal unionized job, he was able to do what he has been able to do in the world, and the world's so much better off for it. And there are many, many stories like yours and Danny Glover's. And we want to make sure that those stories do continue. And I say everywhere I go, if we don't have good jobs, if we have trade deals like NAFTA and TPP, these are the kind of ingredients that have devastated the communities of Freddie Gray and Michael Brown.
Ms. Schaefer.
Thank you, sir, for your testimony. I, too, like Representative Lee, I'm a child of the 50s. I remember when the mail was delivered by hand. I now live in a rural community where we still get mail delivered. However, in this day and age where, everything moves fast and most people communicate by email, not even email, the younger generation just texts or uses emojis. Nobody uses the Postal Service, for the young people don't use the Postal Service, they use the internet. And these type of businesses have really served to push other businesses, out of business. So, and the Postal Service seems like it's kind of in the same category, kind of roadkill. How do you expect to compete with the fast-moving pace of the society, not just here but around the world, with the Postal Service as it is now?
Well, I guess the same way that we dealt with the telephone. Life is changing. But I would respectfully disagree that young people do not use the Postal Service. We have 3 fairly young daughters. They're almost middle-aged, but they're young to us. They use the post office differently than my wife and I do. They do pay their bills online despite their father's good advice to do otherwise. But guess what they also do? They use it in such a way that we never dreamed of. They shop online, and when they shop online, guess what? If the e-commerce revolution does not have a public infrastructure to deliver that product, e-commerce dies. So it's changing. There is less first-class mail, but there's tons of mail. There's all sorts of research that says people gather information 35% better when they read it on paper, for example. There's a reason why people still advertise. There's a reason why politicians, during election time, send literature through the mail. It's a way to communicate with people. There's a reason why advertisers send these catalogs. If it wasn't worth it to them, they wouldn't do it. And if we don't have a public infrastructure, this all dies. A public infrastructure that has to go everywhere, universal service at uniform and reasonable rates. So I think there's a vibrant and great future for the public postal service. By the way, many medicines have to come through the mail. Veterans often have to get their medicines through the mail. Sometimes you can only order so much at a time because of the type of medicine. And if we don't have a postal service that can deliver, we're in trouble there. And it's worth pointing out also, I think, that a number of the large privatized package companies put millions and millions of packages a week into the public postal system because it's not profitable for them to go to every address. But we, by constitution and mandate, do. So it's really part of the ability for the entire commerce and communication of the country to move forward. Challenges, yes. Changes, yes. But those changes don't always hurt. There's this whole view that the internet is killing the post office, it's changing the post office. But we have a saying, what the internet taketh, the internet giveth.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.